And it is, as we will discuss when we get to talking about the content of these shows, increasingly difficult to separate fact from fiction on these TNA wrestling shows. On the October 30th show, Russo expected to arrive and be crowned like the head of creative, but nope, Jerry Jarrett was still in charge, so Russo wasn't at that show, he wasn't at the November 6th show, and he wasn't at the November 13th show. But then, all of a sudden, he was revealed to be Mr. Wrestling 3 on the November 20th show, which was a plan as far back as I think the character was introduced. That character, that Mr. Wrestling 3 character, was always introduced, meant to be introduced as Vince Russo. That wasn't a twist or a swerve or a change of direction. So, while they are putting out in public, a lot of people are putting out in public, that there is this dispute and this war going on between Jerry Jarrett and Vince Russo, which I think there actually legitimately was. They are also, on the flip side, trying to turn Vince Russo into a television character.
I don't know if they all are trying to turn Vince Russo into a television character, but it's really evident how much this sucks, because even just reading about Russo, sends groans and shivers down my spine. I feel worse for having mentioned the name. Everything he does, it just turns to slime, and I'm not looking forward to the next 2 years of on-screen Vince Russo.
Because we're moving fully into the sex era, Liam.
I mean, that I am excited for, but yeah, and it's so evident. It's the amount of clean finishes on these shows has dropped dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has some bullshit ending, some DQ, some weapon going in, something backfiring. It's so much harder to invest and to watch these things.
And a lot of the dumb character elements are coming back, and we're fully moving into the work shoot here of this company. There's going to be more in December and more in January, where the whole idea of the show is, let's work the internet, let's work the roster. Because the big thing about that Vince Russo reveal is they worked the roster.
Yeah, who cares about working the fucking roster?
Especially for a reveal about Vince Russo. It's one thing, it's we don't want to tell the roster CM Punk is debuting on our show, even though everybody knows it was happening. But we're not going to tell our roster because we want it to be a big surprise. And I think most of the roster is probably fine with that. The roster is probably not fine with this guy who you have told them repeatedly that he's not working for the company, suddenly showing up as a surprise television character in the main event. I don't think the roster are going to be quite pleased that you worked them on that.
Also someone who, the initial instinct is going to be, this person has control over creative stuff.
Yeah, and they've been denying it from before the existence of this company. From May 2002, they've been denying that Vince Russo has any creative involvement in this company over and over and over again, no matter how much he's backstage. He's just producing pre-tapes. He's not actually, he's just helping with the interviews. He doesn't actually have any meaningful role in creative. Even when he showed up on TV, that was the company line. He doesn't have any role in creative. It's guys, would you stop it? So would you stop working these poor people?
The fact that you feel like you have to lie about this is probably indicative of the fact that you shouldn't have this guy involved in the creative process.
It was like the 2014 thing. It's just
yeah.
If you have to have him in hiding, if you have to not tell people that he's working for you, why do you insist on having him work for you? If it has to be a secret, if so much of the roster will be upset and furious and angry at the fact that Vince Russo is the person responsible for their creative, if that's the case, why are you hiring him?
He's just not worth the hassle.
And I know why they're hiring him. He's Jeff's friend. That's why they're hiring him, but...
Really? Nepotism in the TNA?
God forbid.
Hmm.
So it's bizarre to see that play out behind the scenes and in public, because in his book Jerry Jarrett outlines the entire sex story, where he's Vince Russo will come in, and I think legitimately Jerry Jarrett's if I make this guy an on-screen character, he will leave me alone and stop trying to oust me out of my own company.
No, he'll just shoot on you in the middle of the ring and call you a piece of shit.
And threaten to fight you. But again, we'll get to that when we cover the shows. Vince Russo.
Let's make an honest attempt here, right now, to get all of our Vince Russo stuff out of the way. Because we can't do this for the next 24 episodes.
I think we can. I think we can just be for the rest of this entire podcast, it's just me and you just going...
So I'm going to make a concerted effort to not go, ugh, Vince Russo every time, but I want it to be known that it's implied in everything I say from this point forward. I would never say anything without that implication on my sentence, on my thoughts about Vince Russo. So that's it for now. I'm going to try to not do it and groan every time his name is brought up, but let it be known, internally it's there.
Yeah, sometimes people are like, hey, you shouldn't reveal the subtext, you should have the deeper art, you should have to examine the art for the understanding, but no, we will tell you the subtext of everything we say is Vince Russo. There's some wonderful Jerry Jarrett quotes in his book. It's Vince Russo is a terrible writer. He has no appreciation of quality in-ring work. He is extreme in crudeness, sexual content, language, and he has no limits regarding principles, religious principles. And there's an even better one on November 11th in his book. Jeff seems to discount the fact that Vince Russo has been a complete failure at everything he has attempted.
I like, because of the way it's structured, it feels like that was a Bible psalm. 10-11 Jerry. Jeff seems to be discount the fact that Russo has been a complete failure at everything he's attempted. So says the Lord.
We should insert that into the Bible. I'm going to find like a major Bible publisher and I'm just going to slide that in there and see does anybody notice.
No one's actually read it, it's fine.
It shall be recited in church and studied in prayer circles, and Vince Russo's fraud nature will be considered a religious doctrine.
As it should be.
So the big person who wasn't happy about Vince Russo, the person who was flat out refusing to work with Vince Russo, because it was like, Jerry was like, oh, a lot of people won't work for TNA anymore if Vince Russo is head of creative. And like Scott Hall stopped showing up for some other reasons as well. But one of the people was Sean Waltman, who did in fact quit. The second he saw that Vince Russo was revealed as an on-air character, he quit.
Sean Waltman is the fucking man.
Because like Sean Waltman was having some trouble. He dislocated his hip in one of the matches with AJ, and then like he has one match this month where he actually shows up, which is the match against Brian Lawler, where he apparently is doing quite badly. His hip is not doing particularly well in that match, even though it was only like 5 minutes long. So he ends up no showing the November 13th show, and he doesn't inform them that he's no showing until like an hour beforehand because he missed his flight. And like, it must be said, it's Sean Waltman, so
grain of salt.
There's, more of a mountain of salt than a grain of salt.
A mountain of something, but...
He didn't show up for the November 13th show, and when the Russo was revealed on the November 20th show, he quit. He quit, and he did not come back. And they were trying to like get him back because they were thinking, oh, wouldn't it be great because you could build the real heat with Vince Russo into a story, because that's the way wrestling always thinks. It's like, no, that we can't make this guy who's unhappy at what we're doing happy. We want to incorporate his unhappiness into our television story. Especially
the worked shoot era, I'm sure that would have led to some very entertaining moments, some very sports entertaining moments.
Waltman's quote for a statement he released: "I'm very sad things have come to this, but from day one, I made it clear if Vince Russo had anything to do with concerning me, there would be no deal. Vince Russo has no respect for wrestling or the importance of the matches themselves to the success of the product in general. I wish them the best, but Russo having anything to do with the product, they are pissing in the wind."
Tremendous.
And I imagine there are people at the time who were like, oh, it's probably a work. And I know even Dave Meltzer was mentioning in The Observer, it's like, oh, it might be, people think it's a work, but no, it's actually, the heat here is real. And you can tell, at least in this instance, the heat here was in fact real, because Waltman did in fact never come back.
Until
2005, until Russo was gone. So
yeah, it's so funny that like, even just, stuff I haven't seen yet, but obviously things I have heard, that like 05 is like this golden era for TNA, and it's just, oh yeah, Vince left.
And it's the same thing. In 2012, Russo leaves, and you get the best like run of TV in ages, and then they bring him back at the start of 2014, and you get the worst run of TV in like the history of the company. Then Vince leaves again when his secret hiring is ousted in the middle of 2014, and you get the best run of TNA TV again. It's like
an absolute virus.
There is a consistent, like, trend in this company. Like, Russo, bad. Russo gone. TV suddenly becomes very good.
If only they, like, had have just learnt that mistake in 05.
So you feel the power seep away from Jerry through the entire month.
Yeah, and it's, like, it's quick. It's quick and it's sad. It's really unfortunate to watch.
And, like, Again, a quote from Jerry when he's outlined that he outlines the entire sex plan. The plan is for Russo to come in and feud with the traditional NWA. I know it's bizarre to say he outlined the entire sex plan, and that's meant to make sense. The Sports Entertainment Extreme stable, in case you're not familiar, was the Vince Russo stable. You will hear a lot more about in the coming weeks and months of this podcast.
I'm looking forward to actually learning what it's all about.
You want to learn all about sex.
Yeah, I'm like, maybe I'll be sex positive. Who knows?
So he outlines the entire plan about how Vince Russo would lead sex against traditional NWA wrestling, and how there'd be an NWA belt and a sex belt, which was the plan.
I want to know who would have been the sex champion.
And Jerry's quote, well, it would be Bruce. Clearly.
I don't know who Bruce is anymore, sorry. Also, Bruce is a babyface. Obviously would be in the NWA.
Then it's who else? Brian Lawler? He's getting around.
He sure is. That being said, Brian Lawler's been great this whole time, so sure.
The quote in Jerry's book, the future problem would be if Russo attempts to become an influence in the writing of the show. Only time will determine if he can limit his ambition to working as a talent.
No, Jerry, learn! Learn from the mistakes of your past! The mistakes of everyone's past!
Then you cut to the narrator voice. He didn't learn.